Joining us now, KT McFarland, national security analyst for Fox News and a regular friend of this program. KT, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, I've been dying to get your read on the situation in Nigeria with these missing girls. I mean, we can all agree it's a tragic situation. Should the United States be involved to the degree it is involved? Should it be involved to a greater degree? And I'd like you to weigh in on this idea of hashtag diplomacy.
Well, first of all, the Nigerian situation is not as easy as sending in the Marines, okay? Even if we made the decision to help them militarily, we don't just send special forces in. Why? Because according to the experts I've talked to, these girls are not being held in one place. They're being held in a whole lot of different villages, sort of 5 here, 7 there. So any kind of a commando raid isn't going to work. Now, on the other hand, I don't think you just have a couple of hashtags and say, ooh, this is so terrible, or make a few speeches of, oh, we sympathize with them. There's a lot we can do that's in between sending in the Marines and sitting on our hands. And that's give the Nigerian government, whose job it is to do this, the kind of assistance that they might need. Help them with intelligence, help them with logistics, help them with communications, but let them do the job.
All right, so that's the right. But what about this idea of the hashtag diplomacy, where everybody puts a little hashtag and it's social media and bring back our girls? I mean, it seems that a lot of people look at that and they say, really, does that accomplish anything?
You kind of wonder what happened to American foreign policy here. What happened to superpower status? It's the sense that we keep making these speeches about everything, but then don't do anything to back up those speeches. It's the red line diplomacy. It's the hashtag diplomacy, where you talk about it, but you don't mean any of it. And it's really the ever-shrinking presidency in the ever-shrinking United States. I've gone back and looked at the Jimmy Carter period. We had a lot of the same feelings about our country. We had the same lack of leadership, but the same sense of, our best days are behind us. The world's catching up. It's going to be different now. We really don't want to be involved in anything. We really can't make a difference in the world. And if we do, we're probably not a force for good in the world. And then it all got turned around, of course, in the Reagan presidency. And I think we are headed for a big turnaround in about 4 or 5 years as the American economy improves for a whole lot of reasons. But in the interim, this notion that we just sort of do a hashtag and then set up the straw man argument. Well, we don't want another war. We don't want to send American troops abroad. And so therefore we're going to do nothing. We're going to do the hashtag thing. Foreign policy is conducted in the space between war and capitulation.
Wow.
That's where we ought to be, and that's where this administration just fecklessly refuses to go.
One last question on this. It's sort of a more of an overall question about our State Department and our foreign policy. Yesterday on this very program, former ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, said that we have basically children running our foreign policy. They're relatively young, relatively inexperienced, and they're really sort of, I'm paraphrasing now, but he basically said that they're driving our foreign policy based on their notion of what the world should be rather than what the world really is.
Well, and they're also judging themselves by, we have good intentions. They're not judging themselves by results. And that's what teenagers do. I didn't mean to do this, Mom, but it happened anyway. Well, I'm not about, I don't really care what their intentions are. I want results. And that's what we're not seeing, whether it's in the Veterans Administration, whether it's the Obamacare website, whether it's dealing with Putin, whether it's dealing with chemical weapons in Syria, whether it's dealing with the Chinese in the South China Sea. We somehow don't ever seem to get the job done. And so I think that's why the next administration, whichever it is, needs to be some competent adults who have a little bit of spine and, A, get it right, and B, when they don't get it right, stop whining.
Can I ask you one quick question? It's been revealed yesterday that Hunter Biden, son of Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, has been named to the board of directors for Ukraine's largest gas and oil provider. Now, the White House has just said, listen, he's a private citizen, he can get whatever he wants. But looking at it through the lens of the Russians, where, the cronyism is rampant in Russia, don't they look at this and say, oh, my gosh, the game is fixed here. This guy represents the United States of America and the Obama administration on behalf of Ukraine.
Yep. Looks like they just bought another American politician on the surface of it, and that's how they do things. That's a good investment on their part. I think it's a very foolish investment on the part of, look, nobody should have to be, it's not a family business in the sense of what a parent does and what a child does shouldn't bear on their political fortunes and career, but unfortunately the rest of the world doesn't operate like that, whether it's China and the princelings, the sons and daughters of the leaders, whether it's in Russia and the cronies, the rest. America doesn't look a whole lot better under those circumstances.
All right, so let's talk about Ukraine. The situation doesn't seem to have gotten any better. I noticed yesterday that the Russians said, "Oh, we're so irritated with you, America, that in 2020, if you don't straighten up, we're not going to send your astronauts into space anymore." Sort of seemed like a hollow threat, but really, I think what they were trying to say is, "But remember, we take them up now, and for the moment, we'll let that continue."
We might throw them out of the
It'd be a shame if
spaceship,
something
is what they're
happened to
saying.
your nice little international space station.
Well, again, I think what we'll now see is there's such a sense of perceived weakness on the part of the president in the United States. We are going to see an escalation of crises around the world, similar to the end of the Carter administration, when countries and leaders and dictators and autocrats look around and say, "This is my moment. I'm going to take whatever I can get. I'm going to push America around however I can." And so you will see, instead of a decrease of tensions in the world, you'll see an increase. Russia and what Russia is doing in Central Europe, Eastern Europe, is an indication of this. What China's doing in the South China Seas, even yesterday, sort of defying the United States to do something as they're taking more and more regions for oil drilling rigs. And it's the Russians saying, in effect, "We're going to throw your guys off the spaceship unless you guys..."
Wow.
So don't anticipate that this is smooth sailing. It's going to get a lot worse, and it's going to get ratcheted up as even pipsqueak tin horn dictators decide it's their moment to push America's nose in the dirt.
All right, KT, thank you very much. Always a pleasure.